Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of You Can Exhale Now podcast. Today, I'm really excited to host Kim Grevler, who is licensed as a clinical social worker and fully certified as a life coach, and who's been working with children and adults in mental health since 2011. Kim also created a site called Selfish Ladies, where she works with everyday women who are self-doubting and uncomfortable to move forward by being, selfish. So you might be experiencing self-doubt, anxiety at work or in your relationships, difficulty finding happiness and satisfaction. And so I have lots of questions for Kim today. So Kim, welcome to the show.
Welcome to You Can Exhale Now, a mindful living podcast for the modern pace, hosted by Lesia Liu. This podcast is for anyone who wants to get more out of life without the burnout. Because when you learn to take proper care of yourself, you have more energy, a more positive outlook, and more gratitude for life. And because you cannot reach your goals if you're tired, overwhelmed, judgmental, angry, and feel sorry for yourself. Each episode, you will learn actionable strategies for self-care, mental health, productivity, better life-work balance, and happiness from coaches, therapists, and experts. Stop holding your breath. You can exhale now. Choose to be a more authentic version of yourself than you've been in a while.
Thank you so much.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your mental health background, and then how you came up with an idea for Selfish Ladies?
Sure. So I am a social worker by profession. I went to university and got my master's degree in social work. And one thing led to another, and I graduated and I found myself working in various different positions within the mental health field. And really with the goal of obtaining my license, which is what is required by any mental health professional in order to be able to go out on your own and maybe start your own private practice or your own business taking clients. And before I knew it, I was kind of like really knee deep into the mental health world. I started off working with children and adolescents in foster care who were in and out of their foster care placements. And so my job was to go in and provide short-term kind of rapid intervention therapy for them and the foster family in efforts to be able to have them remain in their foster homes. And oftentimes that was a lot of, conflict resolution and issues with anxiety and depression and things like that. And then when that program was unfortunately closed down because of state funding, I moved on and worked for many years as an inpatient social worker for an inpatient adult psychiatric unit in Brooklyn, New York. So that was, for much more severe cases of adults who had been admitted to the hospital involuntarily because they were, they were suffering from severe mental health symptoms, or they were at risk of safety to themselves or others. And so I kind of like found myself in this world of really, really severe mental health issues, which was never my intention going into my chosen career. So I kind of had to take a step back and ask myself, like, what am I really doing? Like, why am I here? And I find that a lot with my clients and a lot of women in general, and a lot of men also. You start off doing one thing and before you know it, you're somewhere else, and you're like, how did I end up here? This wasn't my intention going into all of this. So that was kind of this onset of Selfish Ladies. As I started realizing that I was unhappy and I was doing work that was wonderful work and important work, but it wasn't satisfying to me. It was not utilizing my strengths, and it surely wasn't why I wanted to enter the field of social work to begin with. So I quit, and I was very privileged to be able to have some, the opportunity to take some time off. And I was struggling with my own issues at that time, not knowing what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, what was my purpose. I think deep down, I've always known my purpose. And I think a lot of us do, but we just get in our own way and we get in our own heads, and all of that self-doubt starts to cloud it. And so I took a life coaching course myself just to add to my credentials and have something to offer my clients if I decided to continue working one-on-one with people in the helping space. And I got connected with my own coach and started working with her. And just like one thing led to another. And I realized that whatever was holding me back and all the issues I was having with myself and my family and setting boundaries and issues in my marriage, like all of these things were not unique to me. And just, I don't know, one thing led to another, like I said, and I realized that this was something that had to be, that I had to deal with more directly. And so I started kind of pulling through all of my therapy skills and all of my education and all of the work that I'd done with my clients, and synthesizing all of, these psychological theories and interventions, and realized that there was a real need for helping women move forward without having to constantly be focused on the past trauma, and really kind of getting at the nit and grit of what's holding women back, the everyday woman, right? Not every single woman, but the everyday woman who's having anxiety and self-doubt and is uncomfortable. It's almost always because we are not in tune with what we want, what we need, what's important to us. We are always deferring to other people. And so I learned that I was doing that kind of in a roundabout, inadvertent way. And lo and behold, Selfish Ladies was born, and I kind of haven't really looked back since.
That's awesome. So how do you define selfishness? What does it really mean, and how does it differ from being self-centered? And why do you think we are taught from a very early age, especially women, but men as well, to not be selfish, right? We almost experience guilt, or we experience self-doubt and fear around being perceived as selfish. Why do you think that is?
Those are great questions, and I couldn't agree with you more. Every time I start easing clients into what it means to be selfish and how to put their needs first, almost always I'm left with that question, like, but isn't that selfish? And it's like, well, yes, no, duh, right? Of course it's selfish, and selfish is the best thing that you can be. And I think we are raised to feel guilty about that because somewhere along the way, our parents get it wrong, and our parents learn from their parents, and they learn from their parents. And so this idea was born that knowing what we want and need is equated to being inconsiderate. And that is just not accurate. Selfish is not inconsiderate. Those are two different things. I can be considerate of you and what you're going through and what you need. But if that's in direct conflict with what I'm going through and what I need to be selfish. So I can consider you and still make my decisions about me. And in fact, that is the healthiest way to go about life. When we demonize being selfish, when we make people feel guilty about being selfish, what we are training the brain to do is to negate what I need. And if I don't know what I need, and if I don't know what I want, I can't be direct about going about getting it. I start to resent other people. I start to become passive aggressive. I'm avoiding conflict. I'm blaming them. I'm unhappy. They're unhappy. Nobody's happy. So yes, selfish is a necessary ingredient to confidence and to living a healthy, confident, happy life. And the distinction there is to identify that selfish is not inconsiderate.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. And you're talking about addressing your own needs and wants. And so my next question, I guess, has two parts. First of all, what happens if we're not addressing our own needs and wants? You kind of started touching upon that. And then second, I think back to talking about being selfish and selfishness in general, I think a lot of people tend to think like, I have my basic needs met, right? So I have clothes, I have food on my table, I have roof over my head. So my basic needs are satisfied. I think it's the wants where we really struggle, right? I want beautiful relations. I want respect at my work. I want this or I want that. And I think that's where a lot of women are struggling. So how how can we untangle that needs from wants, and what happens if we do not address our wants as well as needs?
Really, that's such a good question. And it's kind of a hard one to answer because you're right. The line is very blurred between needs and wants. And I don't know about you, but definitely for me as a kid, whenever I would say I want something or I need something, my mom would always respond like in a really snarky way, like, you don't need that, you want that, So almost like teaching me from young that like it's selfish to have wants and it's a bad thing. But there kind of isn't, I mean, not there kind of is, there is a difference between needs and wants. But in my opinion, and in my professional experience, you don't need to distinguish between the two. What you need to do is to dig down deep when you're experiencing that you need or want something and further explore what that is. Why is it? Because if you're just on the surface having a need or a want, and it's failing me I like to give examples when I talk, and right now my brain has kind of gone blank as far as distinguishing between these two for you for an example. But if I'm in a fight with my husband, for example, and I need for him to give me time in order to kind of express myself before he comes in and explains himself, some could look at that as, oh, well, you want time to speak and you don't want him to speak. And then others could look at it and say, no, you need to know that you're not racing the clock so that you can speak effectively and clearly. It doesn't matter how you frame it, if it's a need or a want. Plain and simple, if I recognize that that is going to help me be an effective communicator in this moment so that I can get my point across, and then I can give him the opportunity to get his across, and we can kind of respect one another's space enough to hopefully come to a resolution, then whether it's a need or a want, I don't care. It's something that is necessary to me in that moment to set me up for success. So it's really about going deeper and understanding what is it that you need and how can you go about getting it, and what is it that you want and how could you go about getting it. But really understanding from a deeper level, like what's it about? Not surface level. Oh, I need money to live a happy life. Yes, that's true, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about really like deeper, getting to the crux of it. What's that about? What are you afraid of? What would happen if you didn't have that income? Like really getting deeper with yourself as to what is this need or want about? What's fueling it? What's underneath it? So that you can then go about getting that. And that's now your new guiding principle. I'm not sure. Does that make sense how I just explained it?
Absolutely, it does.
Okay.
So, I think you brought up a really good point. When we have a conflict with somebody, it doesn't matter if it's at work or at home. Sometimes we have this feeling of being misunderstood or taken advantage of, like people are walking all over us, right? And on the other hand, we have this fear again of being perceived as selfish, which just becomes this, horrible circle that we just walk in, and we develop guilt and self-doubt and resentment towards ourselves and others. So how do you suggest we really break that circle of resentment towards ourselves, towards other people, and really making sure that our needs and wants are met? Do we just fight for it? Do we talk to people about it calmly and explain why we need it? Is it a combination of both? How should we go about it?
It is a combination of both, but even before that, that's the behavior, that's the action. And my hope for everybody, especially my clients who I have to help coach them to understand how to do this, it doesn't come naturally to us, is that before I go to an external source outside of myself to go after what I want and what I need, I have to know what I'm asking for. I have to know what it is that's upsetting me and what it is that's an issue for me that I would like to be corrected. And so when I'm not selfish, I don't know what that is. So oftentimes, if you're feeling like you're being walked all over at work, you're now worried that that person thinks, like you said, you're worried that they think you're selfish, that you worry that they're judging you. You're worried about what they're thinking, what they're thinking, what they're thinking, what they're saying, right? It's all about them. So the likelihood that you're going to go about problem solving and it's going to have a wonderful corrective experience and you're going to feel great resolve and you're going to be confident is slim to none, because the motivation, the intention behind the action is about the other person. And so what we have to do when we're setting boundaries is completely and utterly flip the script, which is why being selfish is required. I can't understand what is going through my mind, what I'm insecure about, what doesn't feel good for me. I can't understand why I'm upset about what somebody said if I'm not attuned to myself and the thoughts that are going around in my head. So first, I always would advise, understand, how are you responding to that colleague or that person at work? Is it motivated by fear, by guilt, or by obligation, or by a mixture of all three? If it's one, two, or all three, you know your boundaries have been crossed. Either they have crossed your boundaries or you have crossed your boundaries, because you are now maybe deferring to them. Maybe you're afraid of conflict, so you're just kind of sitting quiet. You're not really saying anything. Maybe you're worried that what you're going to say, they're going to disagree with. So you kind of just yes them, or you say you don't really know what you want or what you need. Maybe they're acting extremely inappropriate towards you and you're making excuses for that, or you're tolerating it or accommodating it. So you're not even in that moment aware enough that how they're behaving is inappropriate, and you're kind of blaming yourself. Well, maybe I just need to make them act that way. And the list goes on. So if I am not first and foremost aware of what my emotional experience is when I'm around somebody and what they're bringing out in me, I cannot take that next step of going to the boss or going to my colleague or speaking up for myself, because at that point, I don't know what I'm speaking up for. So I need to first understand, like I said, is it fear, guilt, obligation, or a mixture of all three? And then I can start to dig a little bit deeper and ask myself, okay, so what's that about? What did they say that set me off? Why am I afraid of conflict with this person? Is this person known to be somebody who starts shit in the office and is somebody that would throw me under the bus? Is this a real threat? Or is this a story I'm telling myself? Is this person really that scary? Or am I just super insecure in my own work and this person isn't even really thinking anything mean of me? Right? Is it real or is it perceived? And depending on the answer of that, I would then advise you, what to do and how to do it. But that's kind of how I would start. I know that's a lot of information, so let me know if you have any follow-up questions, but that's kind of how I would start to answer that question.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it leads to a lot of self-awareness work. Would you agree?
Oh, yes. It's all about getting to know yourself.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any specific strategies of how we can dig deeper into ourselves, but also, do it really safely? Because obviously, all of us have some sort of trauma, whether it's a small, tiny trauma, or if it's a big, critical thing that happened in our life. How can we go about becoming more self-aware of our desires, our drives, and then how that kind of translates into needs and wants that we show to the world?
I love that question. And I think you said it perfectly. How do you do that safely? Because depending on where you are in your journey of self-evolution, emotional evolution, that may be really scary to get to know yourself. And yet it's a necessary ingredient if we want to be brave, thriving, confident, well-adjusted adults who can go through life and have setbacks and not derail, right? So for me, it all comes down to understanding first how you are letting your emotions guide you so that you can get to your thoughts. Because the thoughts is where we do all the work. We change the thoughts, we challenge the thoughts, we question the thoughts, we attack the thoughts. That's really where the work is done. But in order to understand our thoughts in a safe way, I need to know when to address them. And so anytime you're uncomfortable, anytime you just get that little ping in your tummy, like something doesn't feel right, I don't feel very confident, I'm really nervous, I'm kind of anxious, maybe I'm uncomfortable, I would have you stop in that moment and ask yourself, what did I just say to myself? And verbatim, I would write down every single thought that you just had. And then I've developed this list of thoughts that I call shit thoughts, and that's self-harming, insecure thoughts. And I think I have about 8 of them on there. And you can find some, not all of this information on my blog, because I'm still in the process of developing it into some kind of workbook. But self-harming, insecure thoughts, any thought that is self-deprecating, maybe you're calling yourself names, maybe you're having all or nothing thinking, maybe you're jumping to conclusions about yourself or someone else, maybe you're mind reading, so you've convinced yourself that you know what somebody else is thinking about you, even though you have 0 ounce of proof to back that up. Maybe you're fortune telling, worst case scenario thinkings. Right? Well, I can't do this because if I do that, then my boss is gonna judge me, and then my boss is gonna call in this person, and then together they're gonna fire me, and then I'm gonna be unemployed, and I'm not gonna have a home. And before you know it, you're spiraling out of control. So once you have your list and you understand what you're saying to yourself, you can then ask yourself, how many of those thoughts are full of shit? Right? How many of those thoughts are self-harming, insecure thoughts? Is this a thought that if my friend had it, I would tell her, yep, you're right, your life's going to shit, and you should just, you're not worth anything because your life is, you're worth nothing. No, I would never say that to a friend, yet I'm saying it to myself. So when you talk about self-awareness, being selfish, the crux is you need to know yourself. And I often get the question, well, how can I just feel better quickly? No, there's no such thing. You have to get to know yourself. You need to know what you're saying to yourself. And to get out of your head, write down those thoughts when you have them. Well, what did I just say to myself that made me feel so horrible? Write it down and then take on a new perspective. If you were a new person in your brain, if you were an explorer that had never known what you thought, and that explorer just came into your brain and took a look at these thoughts, what would she think? Would this be a safe place? Would she feel like you were having balanced thinking that was kind of gray and neutral, or would this be overtly negative? Is it doom and gloom? Is it self-deprecating? And before you know it, you're going to start challenging those thoughts. But the starting point before we can even get into thoughts is you have to be willing to do this work. I mean, it is work. It is work. So you've got to be willing to do it before you can even dive right in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, I think all of us have self-deprecating thoughts at one point or another. And then hopefully, by addressing those and really laughing at them, you're increasing your self-confidence. But I think there's also the other side, of, again, being selfish. So as we get a little bit more confident in our knowledge, in our appearance, in our sense of humor or whatever, there's again kind of that fear of being judged as being selfish, as being too much. So how do we address that, almost self-deprecating thought, but that comes from outside, inside us? Does that make sense?
I think so. So are you asking, how do we manage when we're starting to feel better if we're still afraid that people are going to judge us?
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Okay. I think that that's a natural fear. First and foremost, acknowledge that that's normal. Not everybody's going to like you, and you're not going to like everybody. And that's okay. If I'm at this point, if I'm more confident and I've been doing the work and I'm acknowledging when my thoughts are not serving me, and I'm challenging them and I'm rewriting them with more empowering, kind of more self-encouraging thoughts that are, more gray and balanced and neutral. And I'm still thinking, well, this person might still think I'm kind of like, they're not going to want to be my friend, or they don't really like what I'm saying. That's information that you need to have in order to make your next step. So if I get the sense that somebody doesn't like me when I now like myself, And then I have proof that they don't like me. Maybe I find out that they're talking badly about me, or they say something mean to my face. Don't be afraid of that. Embrace that shit, because that is what allows you to then say, oh, maybe you're just not the person for me, and that's okay. Sayonara, on to the next one. I don't need to make everybody like me. Absolutely not. If I'm now liking myself, I need to embrace even more so when somebody is not a good fit for me, and give myself permission to move on from them. I would not be held back by thoughts that you have to make everybody like you. You just don't. I mean, I love that there's a meme that goes around Instagram every once in a while that says, you know, you're not tequila. Not everybody's going to like you, or something like that. Like, just get okay with that. You know, just get comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, in the beginning of the episode, you've touched on an important point of purpose, right? And we all have purpose in this life. And a lot of times, again, that self-doubt, that self-deprecation get in our way. Sometimes to achieve our purpose in life, we have to be selfish and to pursue that interest, that hobby, that want or need in our life to see where it leads. So can you speak a little bit about how to find your purpose and be, you know, if you feel like you uncovered your calling, how can we move past that self-doubt and step really into the fullest versions of ourselves?
So to answer the first part of the question, which is how do you tune into it? I'll start with that. And then the second would be, once you know what it is, how do you go about it? And I don't know that there is a clear-cut answer, but
right
within my framework, how a selfish lady, in my opinion, would approach this is first and foremost to remove any of the judgment or the pressure to figure it out, or to have it done by a particular timeline. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that for a lot of us, we kind of know what we want to do or what our purpose is. And by the way, purpose does not have to be this whole huge, magical, amazing, life-changing, you know, almighty, powerful experience. Like, purpose can mean different things to different people. And so, first of all, get rid of the assumptions that purpose means one thing, or that it needs to be done by a particular time. You have to impact X amount of people in order for you to be valid in achieving that goal. Get rid of whatever assumption and pressure it is that you're putting on yourself to achieve a particular purpose or know what that purpose is, and embrace that if you give yourself time and you're patient and you're open-minded and you're going through your life and you're tuning into what feels good and what doesn't, eventually you're going to wrap around to what you want to do more of. And that might be your purpose. We don't know. Like I said, it doesn't have to be this huge life-changing leadership award, et cetera, kind of journey for everybody. It's different for everyone. So once you've figured out what feels right for you and what's important to you, and that could be, it could be in your career that you're fulfilling your purpose. It could be in your personal life. It could be a hobby. It could be within your family. Purpose can, like I said, it can look different to different kinds of people, depending on your life journey and what you're meant to be doing here in this lifetime, et cetera. And so once you've figured it out, I would just start getting curious. Curiosity is the best way to approach anything in life. It prevents us from becoming overly judgmental. It prevents us from having all or nothing thinking, where we box ourselves in and we believe that there's just one right way to go about doing something. And then we, as you can imagine, we don't end up doing it that way. And then we're resentful or disappointed. So be curious. What would this look like if I pursued this a little bit more? What would I like to get out of it? You know, ask yourself a ton of questions with the goal and the intention of being curious. What do I want? What would that look like? Who would it involve? What would the outcome be if I had achieved this purpose? What do I intend to feel if I'm doing it and it's working out? What would that feel like? What would it look like? You know, just a who, what, where, when, whys. Just ask a billion questions, and so you can start to kind of get a feel for what that's going to look like for you, and you can self-guide yourself, through that process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So then, how do selfish ladies approach decision making? I think for a lot of women, we tend to doubt, of course, again, ourselves and our decision making. I take tons of time to make even the smallest decisions. So how do you go about, truly becoming effective at decision making and really not look back at the decisions you made in the past?
Love that question. And it's something I work on an incredible amount with all of my clients, and also, just that I write about and I put out there. In my opinion, from my experience, the biggest issue with women, or with anybody, but particularly women, because that's who we're talking about, when it comes to making decisions, is the lack of accountability and personal responsibility that you are taking based on the decision that you're making. We so badly want to make the perfect choice that when we make a choice, that can't be good enough for us. We are just waiting to be proven by the universe or by whoever was included in that decision. We are waiting to be proven that we did something wrong. We're just waiting to say, told you so, you should have done this instead of that. Right? Am I right? It's like,
yes.
You freak out to make a decision because almost always waiting for you at the other end of that decision is your future self standing there, hand on hip, finger shaking in the air. You're an idiot. You're a dumbass. You should have done that other thing. Why didn't you do the other thing? You knew you should have done that other thing. You didn't listen, blah, 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 blah. You're just ready to blame yourself. It has to stop. When you make a choice, accept, realize that there is no fucking way that anybody is ever going to know what the outcome of that choice is going to be. We cannot predict the future. Nobody has that power. So recognizing that that is true will hopefully allow you to realize you too don't have that power. So calm down. With that, you have to take accountability that the decision may not work out. And when it doesn't, you cannot blame yourself. There needs to be, like I said, accountability, responsibility for yourself and your decision to say, listen, I did the best I could with what I had in the moment. And you really need to start believing that, because it's the only truth there is about decisions. And in the long term, one decision, we cannot look at a decision in isolation. We cannot look at it in a vacuum as just one choice. In the long scheme of our lives, each choice impacts the one after it. So I don't know if this choice that I just made, or this decision that I just came to, that's on the surface a failure or the quote wrong one. If I look back, if 5 years pass and I look back, the likelihood that that choice was the right one for me is almost always 100%. It almost always works out the way it's meant to be. And I know people don't like that saying, and I really shy away from using it, the meant to be saying. But when it comes to decision making and accountability, you bet your ass it's true. Because when you look back, the only way you can make meaning out of the long string of decisions you're going to make in your life is when you look back in hindsight. It's never, ever, ever going to be clear in the moment. So let yourself off the hook. When you make a choice, hold yourself accountable to it. This is my choice. I am making it. I know that I don't have all the answers. I know it's not going to be perfect. I know that it may work out and it may not. Regardless of the outcome, I am not going to blame myself. I'm not going to yell at myself. I'm not going to be a bitch to myself. I'm not going to throw myself under the bus. I'm going to face that situation, and then I'm going to make the next decision, because that's life and that's what I have to do.
Love it. Love it. I absolutely love it. And I have to agree with you 100%. So I guess my last question is, we've talked a lot about purpose and being selfish and going after what we want and what we need. So what's your best advice on, how can we live this life fully and not settle for anything less than what we are capable of doing and meant to be doing, and, everything that we deserve?
Oh, such a good question. I mean, if I had the real answer to that, I would be a billionaire, right? Like that would be lovely. But based on who I am and what I do, we are unfulfilled because we don't tune in to ourselves. We do not validate ourselves. We are looking for every opportunity to say, told you so, you're an idiot, you're not good enough, look how much better she is, look how much better they are, they have what you want. We're always doing this. We are so down on ourselves. We are so mean to ourselves. And this is what prevents us from setting boundaries. What are boundaries? They are really just me saying to myself first and foremost, and then to the rest of the world, I matter. I'm here. I matter. So when I matter, I'm not avoiding conflict because my opinion is important. So I'm going to share it. And if you don't like it, okay. Maybe you're not my friend anymore, or maybe you learned something from me, or maybe we go our separate ways. And I don't blame myself for that, right? Because I now have boundaries, and I can't have boundaries, like I said before, when I'm blaming myself, when I'm being a bitch to myself, when I'm throwing myself under the bus, when I don't honor what I know to be true for me. Nobody knows you better than you know you. You have all the information you need, but you are not listening. So when you are in a job and you're going to bed every night anxious and you have a sore stomach and your mouth tastes like metal and you can't eat and you're just so riled up, that's telling you something. Stop and listen. Do not take that as an opportunity to say, yep, you're just not going to cut it. You're not good enough. Don't internalize that. Do not blame yourselves. Listen to what your body and your brain are telling you. Because when you're not feeling great, it's because something's wrong. Something's not working. And it's not that you are wrong or it's something wrong with you. It's that something is not working and your body and your mind know it. You are just so ready to blame yourself for having that be your reality that you're not exploring it. Like I said earlier, with that curious mind, with that explorer mentality who wants to figure it out. You're approaching yourself like the meanest bitch would ever approach you. Like that's what you're doing to yourself. So to become confident, to explore and to accomplish your dreams and to be happy and all the rest that you asked me in that question, you have to honor that you're a real person and that what you're experiencing in your life is real. Now, how you're thinking about it is probably not valid, right? Because when you're yelling at yourself and throwing yourself under the bus and being a bitch to yourself, that's not valid. But the feeling is valid. So when you're not feeling great, honor that. And then we got to go to the thoughts. Okay, if I matter and I'm important and my happiness matters to me and I know that I'm not feeling great, something's not right. Boom. Already we're in a different lane. We're already on a different highway. We're heading in a different direction. One that has a much more hopeful outcome because you're already honoring that something's not right. And then we're going to go to the thoughts. Well, what am I saying to myself that's like really and truly making this so much worse for me? What am I telling myself? What's the story I'm telling myself? And then from there on, as we've spoken about in this episode, and I'm happy to talk more with anybody who has follow-up questions, but that's the journey of life that we're going to continue on when you can honor what your needs are and what your wants are, and you can further, kind of put those into action. But I can't do that when I'm talking to myself so disgustingly, when I'm just waiting for me to fail, when I'm just so convinced that I'm not enough. I'll look for any opportunity to talk myself out of doing what I want. So that's my answer, I guess. You've got to honor yourself. You have to matter. And your feelings and your thoughts are there to teach you something about yourself. Tune into that. Ask yourself questions. Do not avoid it. Do not go and turn on the TV or try to, everyone's always like, well, what can I do to feel better now? Oh, should I meditate? Should I do this? Sure. Do all those things if you want to do them, but that's not where it ends. You're going to have to come back to what you just said to yourself, because that's not going anywhere until you mindfully change it.
Wow. That, I hope that has so much impact for all of the listeners. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Absolutely. So thank you so much for, coming onto the show and sharing all your knowledge and all your wisdom and teaching us how to be a little bit more selfish in our lives so we can enjoy it a little bit more. So Kim, thank you again for coming onto the show today.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for all your sweet words. I really, really enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you. And for those interested to learn more about Kim, all of her contact information, including website and social platforms, will be available in the episode notes below. So definitely check those out.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you've learned a lot of new strategies. Be sure to check out the notes below this episode for additional resources and tools mentioned in today's show. I would love to keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts and takeaways with me on social media channels wherever you are. And do not forget to tag me. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next episode. If this podcast has helped you even a little bit, please leave a review and subscribe so that we can help spread the message together.